Now, I said before the break that it's almost unthinkable, is it not, in 2022, that we could even be thinking about the rationing of energy or blackouts. I mean, we're an island built on coal. We've got huge, vast gas reserves, oil reserves in the North Sea. We're becoming the Saudi Arabia of wind, according to our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, which is all well and good when the wind blows, but not so clever when it doesn't. How on earth can it be that in this digitised age, we face the threat of up to 6 million houses going without power by this October? I think it is the sheer stupidity of successive British governments, both Labour and Conservative and the Coalition. But joining me to discuss this is Malcolm Grimston, Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Environmental Policy at Imperial College London. Malcolm, how can this be? Explain, please.
It's worth saying that this is what they call a credible worst case. I'll be extremely surprised if it actually goes that far. It would take an awful lot of things going wrong at the same time to get there. But of course, as you're implying, the costs of not fulfilling secure electricity supplies are absolutely horrendous in a modern economy. Even a few seconds of outage can mean you've got to reboot all your systems. And longer outages, of course, cause problems for people getting into work, for hospitals, for all the things that we rely on for our lives. So we do have to take a very cautious approach. I think you've really described it. For many years, many of us have been saying we need to continue investing in secure power supplies, nuclear being the obvious example, supplies that will be on whether the wind's blowing or the sun's out, and don't leave us enormously dependent on imports of oil and gas from countries which may, and sadly have, proved not to be as friendly as perhaps we might have hoped. So that's why we've ended up now. There is a dreadful trade-off in energy. You need secure supplies, economic supplies, and environmentally acceptable supplies. And the problem is hitting all those three nails at the same time is very, very difficult. And keeping three plates in the air is tough. In the early years of this decade, we really only looked at environment, and I don't think that was helpful. Now we're recognising that the others are just as important.
So in a sense, what you're saying, Malcolm, is that this is wargaming for the worst-case scenario.
Well, the grid companies and Ofgem have to do this every year. And in fact, this isn't the first time we've had warnings that what they call the capacity margin, that's the spare power that we don't think is going to be needed, but might be if things turn out very bad, a very cold winter, right, very little wind, which happened last year, and the like.
Yeah. But, you know, we have a war going on in Ukraine. We have a sanctions regime against Vladimir Putin. We've heard Ursula von der Leyen, the unelected boss of the European Union, telling us today the sanctions are really biting, she said. Well, yes. I look at the oil price and the gas price, and I wonder whether the sanctions aren't biting us a bit more than they're biting Vladimir Putin. And I just wonder, you know, if he was to turn the taps off, it is conceivable, isn't it, that we wouldn't get enough gas to back up our system in, say, February, when a large anticyclone might sit over the UK and the wind turbines don't turn.
Yes, I mean, the credible worst case is worse this year than it was last year for those very reasons. It still requires all those things to happen. I wouldn't want people to panic about this, but I do hope this is a wake-up call to us, that if we don't look at the long-term issues as well as the short-term crises, we'll just have a string of short-term crises. In the 1970s, the last time that we saw massive oil price increases, it took really 10 years for that to work through the system as we started investing in alternative energy. So we're likely to get there, but it's a shame that we find ourselves in this situation, despite history showing us what happens.